We, the Jewish people, we are the chosen people. The Jews are the chosen people, and it is so apparent when you're in Israel, the Jewish land, and you're with the Jewish people of Israel, how magical we are. That's biblical shit, okay? That's biblical. You can't debate any of that. I want to make sure everybody knows that the Jews are the chosen people. And that's no disrespect to anything or anybody else. But the Jews are the chosen people, and Israel is ancient Judean Jewish land.
And that we have Kamala Harris and Coach Walz in the White House. So I want you to think about what these guys have done in just a short period of time, right? Kamala Harris has united our party, but she has brought with her, and this is really important in this incredible state of Wisconsin, she has brought with her independents and moderate Republicans, right? You saw the event with Liz Cheney. You know, and it's only a matter of time where we're going to see like a bus going through western Wisconsin with, I want you to picture this, Bernie Sanders and Dick Cheney together, holding a sign that says "Brat Fall." Okay, like that is our plan. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. You think you merely stopped a business deal? That is not the case. The Arabs have taken millions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no nations. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system, our system.
You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime.
Welcome to the Eschaton Review, a podcast that's been having human moments in World War III since 1983. Suspended 250 miles above sea level in my extremely above-ground bunker in orbit at 17,000 miles per hour, I bear witness to the full scope of the planet every 93 minutes. I cycle through 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every 24 of your Earth hours. I peer out of my porthole and contemplate the events below, and compile them into these transmissions, which I disseminate every 112 orbits, or one Earth week for you terra firma freaks out there. As I now take a gander at my former planet, once again the eastern half of the North and South American continents coalesce within the irreducible qualia of my consciousness, this tangled jungle of mystery between the years. This week, our timestamp comes from the various halls of power of Washington, District of Columbia, where it is now currently 2:57 in the morning, Thursday, October 17th, year of our Lord, 2024. And as I peer a little closer, using the old global positioning system, I see such hit places as the Smithsonian, Comet Ping Pong Pizza Parlor, the White House. If I zoom in a little closer on the White House, it's kind of interesting. I also love how on Google people can write reviews for just about anything. Not the White House, though. That's off limits. But within the White House, there are various things, some which surprise me. There's something called Indiaverse, which I have gotten no further confirmation on what that is, but it is located in the White House. It's just north of the Vice President's ceremonial office. Hey, is that the one where Biden did all the hair sniffing on live TV? I think it must be. But let's see what the reviews of this mysterious Indiaverse are. It has a website too, indiaverse.info, which leads you to just this like generic, unfinished website. As does another thing within the White House called Pathfinders Coaching, which also has reviews and a website that is almost identical to the Indiaverse website. It's very strange. I encourage you to just, search White House, zoom in as far as you can, and take a peek. But we got 5 reviews of Indiaverse, an average of 4.8 stars. Top review from someone named Jake, who's only written 1 review in their Googling history. Best head I got from a Indian man. Holy. Interesting. Pierogi Man 09 gave 5 stars just 3 days ago and posted a photo of a hip-hop artist I've discovered is not fake, is very real. I think described as up-and-coming, named Lil Polo Dadon? Lil Polo Dadon. And their entire review is 5 stars. Lil Polo Dadon was there, and it looks like a picture of this person's album cover. He's sitting on a throne. There's some kind of very cheap smoke machine effect in the back. And then the final actually written review for Indiaverse, located in the northeast corner of the central wing, I guess you could call it, of the White House. Jake, quote, local guy S, 4 stars. The place of all places. Seriously, consider it. So I'm even more confused than I was before, but hey. Another great thing you can see in Washington, D.C. is a little callback to last week's episode, where I was kind of similarly scouring the map of Ottawa. Another memorial to the victims of communism let's say a real one, because the Ottawa one is theoretical only now, but you can see an actual one in DC, and fortunately there was nothing really funny about the reviews there. Some bitching a little bit. Probably the funniest thing about it is that the closest other landmark to it is a muffin food truck that is Christian themed, called Mission Muffins Concession Stand. It's just right across the street from that old Victims of Communism memorial. So if you're ever in the area, grab a muffin. It's for a good cause, supposedly. I think I checked out Mission Muffin's website, and it seemed very much like a homelessness is a choice, you fucking loser. Now get right with Jesus and come sell some muffins, was kind of the gist of the whole thing. But, I guess they mean well, whatever. But moving on to the real news, enough of my yip-yapping and map-mapping. Although I could go on, I get lost in maps easily. That's an interesting thing about me. Just throwing that out there. Oh, I've got to follow up on the fact that Pierogi Man 09, his 3 other reviews were also all promoting the same Lil Polo Dadon album. One was for Rip One Guest House in some unpronounceable part of Iceland. 1 star. It was nice, all lowercase, and then the album picture. Indiaverse, of course, I already told you, gave 5 stars. Lil Polo Don was there. Finally, Donkey Inn Bar and Grill in Algonquin, Illinois. This was also, let's see, all 3 of these reviews were written 3 days ago. I wonder if this person really went to these places in a single day. Seems unlikely. Donkey Inn Bar and Grill in Algonquin, Illinois. Again, Lil Polo Don was there. Only 1 star. And the same image. They gave the food 1 out of 5, service 1 out of 5, atmosphere 5. They were digging the vibes. They recommended a dish, the Caribbean jerk chicken salad. And as far as wheelchair accessibility is concerned, Pierogi Man 09 says, I don't have a wheelchair. And this was not like a pre-selected option. They had to type that out. I can tell because it's all lowercase. He really only got into it on the bar and grill. He didn't get deeper on the other ones, it looks like. Or did he? It's not like I have tons of other shit to get to on this episode. Let's fuck around with this some more. No, that's it. Okay. So we're in D.C., the heart of the heart of the heart of the Imperial Core, where all the big decisions get made. Before I get off to the real, start talking about the interconnected geopolitics of it all. Talk a little horse race up top. So, the presidential election. Coming up soon, folks. Get ready. I know I forgot / just don't care to bother to send in my ballot from abroad. I'm not even sure if I could vote for PSL as a not resident even citizen of Illinois. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it's like 2.5 weeks. 2.5 weeks. I don't know. Ask Kamala. She seems to know the exact number of days because she thinks it's a way to get out of having to answer questions or think on her feet. It's to just repeat how many days until the election. Ask her if you want clarity on that. But today I saw a very despicable Democratic Party television ad. It's basically trying to appeal to men, and the unspoken thing, I suppose, is specifically to black men, because I guess that's who Kamala's having a problem with. And it was just like a series of guys saying manly stuff and like swearing and shit. It's very, very edgy. I think one of the lines was, I eat carburetors for breakfast. I know this word is itself cringe, but I can't, it's just hard for me to think of a better descriptor of this than sort of peak cringe, transcendent cringe. But then, of course, it morphs into, but I'm also man enough to not be afraid to vote for a lady. Of course, if you didn't see that coming. So that, I believe I saw people describing that as the most desperate political ad in recent memory. Most cringe political ad of all time, things like that. I don't know, I don't disagree. I also just can't really think of a lot of political ads off the top of my head either. I'm sure there are some pretty fucking bad ones, but
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
I'm a man.
And I'm man enough.
I'm man enough to enjoy a barrel-proof bourbon.
Meat.
Man enough to cook my steak rare.
Man enough to deadlift 500, then braid the out of my daughter's hair.
You think I'm afraid to rebuild a carburetor? I eat carburetors for breakfast.
I ain't afraid of bears.
That's what bear hugs are for.
I'll tell you another thing I sure as shit am not afraid of. Women.
I'm not afraid of women.
I'm not afraid of women.
They want to control their bodies? I say go for it.
They want to use IVF to start a family? I'm not afraid of families.
They want to be childless cat ladies?
Have all the cats you want.
Woman wants to be president?
Well, I hope she has the guts to look me right in the eye and accept my full-throated endorsement.
Because I'm man enough to support women.
Man enough to know what kind of donuts I like.
Man enough to admit I'm lost, even when I refuse to ask for directions.
Man enough to not ban young women from reading Little Women.
Or one of those pants books that the sisters like.
I'm man enough to raw dog a flight. It sucked. Not worth it.
I'm man enough to be emotional in front of my wife.
In front of my kids.
In front of my horse. I'm man enough to tell you that I cry at Love Actually. Good Will Hunting.
West Side Story.
That and Predator.
And I'm sick of so-called men domineering, belittling, and controlling women just so they can feel more powerful. That's not how my mama raised me.
I love women.
I love women who support their families.
Women who decide not to have families.
Women who take charge.
And I'm man enough to help them win.
Just doing some assorted quick hits here. As you may have already heard in this episode, the little sound clip of Amy Schloberknobber. I literally can't think of her name right now. Kloberman? Is that it? Whatever. Klobuchar. Amy Stapler Tosser. She threw a stapler, right? Anyway, I described this clip somewhere as giving me the feeling as if I'd been hit in the head with 10,000 staplers all at once. Also, where the fuck is this lady been? I don't know, maybe she's been around and I just don't notice, but I pay a fair amount of attention to all this bullshit, and I feel like I haven't seen her since, like, 2019, but maybe that's just me. You know, she was at some fucking event with Tim Walz, who's, like, more pathetic than ever, by the way, but, she was playing up how great Kamala is for uniting our party, and she said, you know, you saw the Liz Cheney thing, you know, they can't stop bragging about this shit. It almost makes you think they might be in, like, let's just strategically throw this one, and we can say, hey, at least we tried to reach across the aisle. What the fuck else do you want? I don't know, maybe, like, appeal to all the disaffected voters, blah blah blah. Anyway, you saw that great thing with Liz Cheney? Yeah. You know what I picture in my mind palace? I see Bernie Sanders and Dick Cheney riding along in a van through Wisconsin somewhere and waving a big banner that says Brat Fall. This is the part where we blow our brains out. This is the part where we all bite down on the cyanide capsules together, ready to leave this earthly realm, this mortal coil, this Amy Klobuchar purgatory. And like I said, Tim Walz just appears more and more like a big pathetic baby to me every time I see him. He's just so... He just seems to have like no agency or something. Like, I don't know, I find his addition to this whole thing like even more gross in so many ways. Like every time I have to see his, I guess to borrow the phrase from TrueAnon Liz, his big bulldog face, all slack and sloshing around on his skull. He was dressed up literally like Elmer Fudd, going, you know what's amazing? This might be the first Democratic tick in history where both the VP and the presidential nominee own guns. Isn't that something? And he was expecting like a big pop from that for some reason. And I mean, I guess why not? People are fucking applauding Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney, so why not just applaud like, yeah, we like guns now too. Yeah, so that was pathetic. In addition to the man ad that I described, Kamala's other sort of last-minute scramble for black men's votes was essentially, what the fuck do you want? Do you want cryptocurrency? Look at this bullet point list. We'll give you cryptocurrency. You like weed? We know you like weed. But let's legalize weed just for black dudes. I mean, they didn't actually say just for black dudes part, but I mean, this is all supposed to be targeted specifically at black men. And of course, I'm not going to go through all of them. I don't even have them pulled up. I'm just going off memory here. But then the rest of the policies, as far as I remember, were all just like the most meaningless, means-tested, bullshit policies I've maybe ever heard of, ever conceived of. Like, I can't even think of a way to do like a parody of it because it's probably not sufficient. Like, it's like if you've owned a small business that makes in between $100,000 to $105,000 a year. If you've owned that business and your profits haven't fluctuated in the last 5 years, you're good for like a tax credit of like $1,700 in crypto. And the crypto thing is also interesting. I didn't really look into it more, but I just heard through the grapevine, you know, without fact checking it, who cares? It seems plausible enough. I mean, I could look it up right now. That it seemed like very convenient timing that they're throwing in this crypto thing, because the crypto thing really stood out. It's like, is there like some great outcry from the black male community for cryptocurrency policies? But apparently some crypto companies like just gave a huge donation to Kamala like recently, like right before this. But let's see. Yeah, so Kamala Harris backs crypto regulatory framework in pitch to black men. That was on October 15th. Then also from CNBC, Harris packs $1 million contribution from Ripple's Chris Larson shows crypto industry warming to VP. Same day. Same day. At least these stories are published in the same day. So it does seem a bit coincidental, I suppose. But who knows? Chicken or egg? Maybe this crypto company, Ripple, I'm gathering it's called, saw her "Hey black guys like crypto" policy and then wrote the check, but I'm guessing it was probably the other way around. I'm just gonna throw a guess out there. But yeah, the means tested shit is fucking it's such an insult to when I see this stuff, which Democrats seem to have much more of a knack for than Republicans for whatever reason. It's almost like they're proud of all the fine print in their policies and bills, so they just want to like put it all out there, like almost in the name of it. Basically, they're more than happy to give you the nitty gritty on our many new benefits to black entrepreneurs out there or whatever. It's always something like that. But yeah, it's means tested enough to make Liz fucking Warren's head spin. Make her goddamn ceremonial headdress flip off. Flip her damn wig. Alright, I think that's enough with horse race. More than enough. Well, in there ain't no escalation like de-escalation news, the Biden administration appears to be accelerating towards war with Iran. So that's fun for everybody. Now, to compare and contrast slightly, because I've got a shit ton of articles here. But just on this, I've got one from the old Trotsky rag, WSWS. I've explained multiple times now that while I'm not a Trotskyite, I still think that they cover the overall news pretty well. And I understand their biases and whatever. Anyway, I guess I don't have to justify reading articles from this site any more than I have to justify reading them from fucking failing New York Crimes or Democracy Dies in Darkness or CNN or whatever. So here's how a socialist outlet talks about what's going on with the U.S. and Iran. Biden administration escalates towards war with Iran. With less than 3 weeks before the 2024 presidential election, the Biden administration has deployed U.S. combat troops to Israel as part of an agreement with the Netanyahu government to attack Iran. There's a long history of events taking place in October which have had major effects on an upcoming U.S. presidential election. I guess I can't get away from this horse race. By deploying U.S. troops to Israel, the Biden administration is not so much seeking to impact Kamala Harris's electoral prospects as to ensure that plans for military escalation are underway before the election takes place. Instead of an October surprise, it's an October conspiracy to massively expand U.S. involvement in war throughout the Middle East. Yes. On Wednesday, Biden held a phone call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss joint plans related to Iran. During the call, Netanyahu informed Biden that he, quote, was planning to target military infrastructure in Iran, according to a U.S. official who described the call to the Washington Post. The Post reported that, quote, the Prime Minister's stance factored into Biden's decision to send a powerful missile defense system to Israel, both officials said. And they go on to describe how, as the Gray Zone was reporting on before, earlier, the U.S. would be sending the THAAD missile defense system and a number of boots on the ground troops to operate it, but this was denied by the State Department at the time. But whatever, of course, they have their own timetable to tell the public whatever. Anyway, point is, it is now acknowledged fact all around that the U.S. is sending this powerful missile defense system, which I'm kind of surprised they hadn't already given one of these to Israel before I guess. I don't know. I guess maybe they thought the Iron Dome and all the other ones, whatever they're called, David's sling and Samson's ball sack, whatever. I guess they thought those were sufficient, and they've proven not to be, especially after Iran lobbed some 180 missiles. We'll get into a little more of that later, actually. But yeah, this is some serious escalation. Yeah, like I just said, I was reading from a socialist media outlet there, but here's the Newsweek take. The U.S. is caught in an escalation spiral in the Middle East. And yeah, it's just the language of like, oh, we can't help it. We're getting caught up in the whirlwind. Like, what did we ever do? I mean, we were pals with our little buddy Israel, but like, we had nothing to do with this. We didn't start any of this shit. We didn't encourage this at every turn. We didn't arm them to the teeth. It's just insanity, because it's very plain reality just being denied in a rag that will get, I'm sure, 7 billion times the readership as the World Socialist website ever will. And people will read this and they'll nod their heads and they'll be like, I don't like the fact that my tax dollars are getting caught up in this whirlwind, except for the fact where we give tons of tax money to Israel. That part's fine, but the Muslims are the ones making us get caught up in it, god damn it. That's really what this is. It's just like offloading responsibility left and right. It's just the beginning of this Newsweek bullshit. Right now, the U.S. is in real danger of being drawn into a conflict with Iran against its own national interests. Yeah, we've only been like dreaming of this and surrounding this country with our military bases for how long now? National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan confirmed earlier this month that the U.S. will work with Israel to ensure Iran suffers, quote, severe consequences for its missile attack this month. Why didn't they write unprovoked missile attack? What am I supposed to think? That this could possibly be a response to immense aggression on Israel's part, which resulted in no casualties. Oh, how convenient. The big, scary missile attack didn't kill anybody. Again, the big, scary, big bad needs to have severe consequences put on it, but also they're totally weak and they don't even know how to kill non-combatants. All they did was like send a warning shot to Mossad building, apparently landing a missile like within 1,000 feet of the Mossad building, which is purposely placed in a like densely populated residential commercial building type area. But a little more on that down the line. Hawks are already picking out targets. Perhaps Iran's oil industry, perhaps its nuclear facilities, for a coordinated retaliatory strike. I'd like to point out, because like I feel like people don't really consider this a lot of the time. Like they only think of civilians as like the actual people and civilian infrastructure as like apartments and homes, or maybe. But Iran's oil fields and its nuclear facilities are not military targets. They're not legitimate military targets, that is. So, again, more illegal shit, as always. It almost feels pointless to point out when things are illegal in this giant game of risk we call geopolitics. They go on to say, a major Israeli war in Lebanon is not in U.S. interests at all, because it would unleash escalatory pressures that could be very difficult to resist. Difficult to resist. It's like Joe Biden with a fucking ice cream cone dangling in front of his drooling maw. Already, pressure is mounting on the U.S. to go on offense with airstrikes against Iran after Tehran's strike on Israel. But I thought they didn't hit anything. Isn't that the official Israeli story? They missed us, didn't kill any of our people, didn't hit anything, actually. I think they did finally admit that, like, one of their Air Force bases was hit, but they, like, kind of played down the damage. Article goes on to say, this is a terrible idea. No, we don't like the Iranian regime, but we also don't want to destabilize a massive, ethnically fractured country. We don't? Isn't that our bread and butter? What the fuck else does America do in Southeast Asia, the Middle East? We don't want to turn Iran from a viable, if bad, centralized state into a failed state that spawns new militant groups like ISIS and settles into yet another intractable conflict. Well, here's some self-awareness coming up. Remember, that is exactly what happened after the United States attacked Iraq and helped to stabilize the regimes in Syria and Libya. So it goes on to say all these things that we don't want, but that we obviously do want because we keep funding them to happen. That's kind of more of the same. Final paragraph. If Israel's invasion of Lebanon is Gaza 2.0, with the Israel Defense Forces making a major incursion far into Lebanon and staying for a year, will the U.S. be able to hold firm against escalation to offensive strikes against Iran? We'd better hope so, but the precedent isn't good. If, like everything is spelling out right now that Israel is at least trying to create Gaza 2.0. I think it's possible it will be much harder for them to do because Hezbollah is much more formidable than Hamas and is much more prepared and has successfully chased out the Zionist entity multiple times since the early 80s. But we'll see. What's next on the list? But yeah, just to kind of sum up the main points of this whole escalation with Iran, sending the THAAD missile defense system plus 100 U.S. troops who will be on the ground and operating it. It's so obviously a kind of, I hesitate to call it this, but I will, and I'll explain why. It's a trap of sorts, because if this thing gets used, then it's no longer just the U.S. weapons are being used. It's U.S. soldiers are actually the ones, operating them, which does make a difference in how Iran would decide to respond. And that's exactly what Israel wants. That's what Netanyahu wants. It's the grand dream. It's the grand vision. And it's also the U.S.'s grand vision. And it's such an insane one, because I think a lot of people have pointed out that unless we just unload a nuclear payload, like anything resembling more conventional warfare, the U.S. would probably ultimately lose to Iran. But yeah, so Israel's trying to, like that stupid article said, pull us in against our will. But, that's just a lot of political theater at the end of the day, I think. And so, in addition to this escalation, comes some contradictions. Al Jazeera describes it pretty well here. U.S. threatens Israel, but deploys troops, revealing policy inconsistency. That's the most polite way I could think of to put that shit. The U.S. threatened to withhold military aid to Israel. Kind of, sort of, barely, not really, but we'll get into it. But deployed troops and an anti-missile system at the same time. Yes. So I already explained to you, sending the 100 soldiers to operate the THAAD system. Another sort of part of all of this, the political theater, which has been kind of a consistent thing for a while now. It feels like months and months at least, every once in a while, something will quote unquote leak about Biden getting stern with Bibi. And I think the most recent one was he said he was a fucking liar to his face, possibly, or, to his ear over the phone, whatever. Number one, if it's true, so what? Number two, I think it's probably not true. I would bet on not true. It's supposed to be some kind of helpful political PR in some way, but nobody's fucking buying it. I mean, I'm sure there's some idiots who are already just, vote blue no matter who about it, who might buy it. Yeah, Biden, see, they're working tirelessly around the clock for the ceasefire, even though they basically said they stopped doing any of that weeks ago. And they really stopped doing that months ago. They never really started it, actually. Anyway, so Biden's yelling is bullshit. If it's real, it's an empty threat. I imagine Bibi and Biden laughing about the headlines that say he told him to shut the fuck up. They're backslapping each other. Biden's got a little glass full of a half-melted ice cream. Netanyahu's got limbless orphans' tears on the rocks. The rocks are also made out of limbless orphan tears, just frozen. So Al Jazeera, they're talking about this private letter. This was the big news recently. Wow, look at America's threatening Israel. America's using some sense of leverage over Israel. Isn't that what this is? Even though this was supposedly a private letter which leaked. I'm sure, again, that was a total accidental leak. And I do have the leaked letter. It's quite boring, but it also reveals what horseshit this all is. It was definitely not written by Biden, of course. It's signed by Blinken and Lloyd Austin. And I'll just read a little bit from the Al Jazeera article. In the private letter, which was leaked on Tuesday, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin called on Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer to implement a series of, quote, concrete measures with a 30-day deadline to reverse the deteriorating humanitarian situation in Gaza. The U.S. briefly paused the delivery of thousands of bombs to Israel earlier this year as Israeli officials plan to expand their operations in southern Gaza. Almost shame on them for Al Jazeera for even mentioning that. I mean, they go on to say that it was quickly resumed and whatever, but that pause was such a joke. It affected zero, obviously. It was less than a gesture. But blah, 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 briefly paused, but it quickly resumed and continued supplying Israel with weapons, even as it escalated its assault in Gaza and later in Lebanon. A letter jointly signed by both the Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense indicates a heightened level of concern, and the not-so-subtle threat here, whether the administration carries through with it or not, is that they will actually impose consequences under these various legal and policy standards. Brian Finucane, a former legal advisor to the U.S. State Department and senior advisor with the U.S. program at the International Crisis Group, told Al Jazeera. Whether the administration would carry through with it remained very much in question. It's important to note that there were legal standards during the entire course of this conflict, and the Biden administration has just not enforced them. It may be the situation is so dire in northern Gaza that the political calculations have changed, and that they may actually finally decide to implement U.S. law, but it's really long past the point at which they should have done so. Yes, no shit. And that's just talking about U.S. law, their own country's fucking law, not to mention all the international laws that are flouted constantly on an hourly basis by the U.S. and Israel alike. He also noted that the 30-day deadline would expire after the U.S. presidential election next month. So they may feel that whatever political constraints the administration may have felt it was operating under, they may feel less constrained by, he said. Here comes our boy Matt Miller. Miller, the State Department spokesman, told reporters on Tuesday that the election was, quote, not a factor at all. But Anele Shyline, why can't people give some fucking normal names when I read this shit? A former State Department official who resigned earlier this year in protest of the administration's Israel policy disagrees. I interpret it as being intended to try to win over uncommitted voters and others in swing states who have made clear that they are opposed to this administration's unconditional support for Israel. I do not expect to see consequences. Well, the uncommitted movement is already folded, so whatever. Any fucking way. So forget about all this shit about elections. That doesn't matter. I really don't think it does. I don't think... Whatever. I'm not even going to get into election talk. Save that for another time. It's Matthew Miller time. In the mouth of madness. I've got 3 Matt Miller clips. Might as well come up with a little name for this segment. So far, In the Mouth of Madness is the best I've got. Well, just the only thing I've thought of. I've heard people calling him Matthew the Mouth of Sauron Miller, which is pretty good if you like that Lord of the Rings shit. But the first here, he squares off with another good reporter that I feel like I haven't really seen as much in the last year, but maybe it's probably just me, whatever. remember seeing him more often when he'd be asking sort of tougher questions about Ukraine. But anyway, Matt Lee is his name, so this is the Matt v. Matt time. Matt Lee's the older, bigger guy whose glasses are always like on the verge of falling off the very tip of his nose. That's kind of his style. He's another one of these guys who doesn't take any bullshit really from these people, these spokes things. Here they get into the stupid fucking letter. And let's take a listen.
There seems to be some confusion about what the warning or what the message to Israel is. And a lot of people have taken the view or have interpreted it as you are threatening a quote-unquote arms embargo on Israel. Now, maybe I'm mistaken, but my impression was that's not what is being threatened here or being discussed.
So our commitment to Israel's security and to the defense of Israel is ironclad. That will not change. As the letter makes clear, there are implications under U.S. law to the delivery of humanitarian assistance, and Israel doing everything that it can to ensure that the delivery of humanitarian assistance is not impeded. And I'm not going to get into hypotheticals, but it does make clear that there are implications under U.S. law. But
pause. Okay. New thing for the Matthew Miller fucking bingo card. I'm not going to get into any hypotheticals. That's also something Kamala said the other day. This is like the new thing going around to try to just not have to answer questions as you're going on and on about hypothetical situations. I'm not going to get into anything hypotheticals about this. But him beginning this whole thing with, our commitment to Israel is ironclad. It is eternal and everlasting. So then what are we even talking about? Then you're not threatening, you can't possibly be threatening them with anything. What are the implications? The frustration I'm expressing now, well, just buckle up, because they just kind of go around in circles like this. But it's almost funny if it weren't about such dark, serious shit. But Matt Lee has no trouble basically amplifying the absurdity of Matthew Miller's talking points here.
Our hope is that Israel will take the steps that we outlined in the letter.
I get that, and that's what you said yesterday. But the thing is that the letter talks about additional FMF, foreign military financing. As you are well aware, there is a 10-year MOU with Israel that is already on the books that you are obligated to provide Israel with $3.3 billion a year in FMF on top, and then another $500 million a year until 2028 for missile defense programs. When the letter talks about additional FMF, does it not mean on top of what you have already committed to?
I don't want to get into parsing the letter in any further detail. As I said yesterday, we intended this to be a private diplomatic conversation, not something that we discuss publicly. We're going to have the conversations about the full implications.
He nearly just winked when he said
but
that.
I think I don't want to go beyond that publicly at this point.
We intended this to be private, wink, wink.
FMF, that does not include FMF that is already in the MOU that you have already committed to, and in some cases
seems like a very easy to answer question. It's not even controversial, really.
Post 2025 or 2026, whatever.
I guess it is controversial. Our obligations under the law. Beyond that, as I said, I don't want to try to.
I'm not sure I understand what your obligations are under the law.
What are the obligations, dumbass?
I do fully understand. We're going to have.
I don't think you understand.
We're going to have additional FMF mean money on top of the $3.3 billion a year.
As I said,
$3.8 billion a year.
This is not a letter that we intended to make public. We intended to discuss public.
Wink,
I understand
wink.
it is public, and so
I'm smirking. I'm smirking harder than ever.
But when it comes to those implications, we're going to have those conversations privately with the government of Israel, and we hope ultimately that this is all hypothetical, because we hope ultimately the government of Israel implements the steps that we outlined, and there are no further implications.
Right, but
what would those implications be? You can't answer, because there's nothing.
I can't speak to them here in this setting.
Okay, so if we drag you outside and off camera, you'll be able to speak.
If you join the government of Israel, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about the intent of that letter and what we fully mean by that. But I don't think that's obviously that's not a step that's going to happen. No, I'm being serious, Matt.
Are you being serious, buddy? Are you being serious? Yes, drag that asshole outside, make him answer. What a frustrating little man. This whole idea of, wow, the U.S. is really playing hardball with this private letter. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it's in one of these other clips that's coming up, but I feel like someone brought up the idea of, like, why write a letter? If this is so urgent, like, can't you pick up the fucking phone and talk to Netanyahu directly about this? Like, I mean, I guess it's more formalized, whatever, but still. The point is that Matt Miller can't answer about, well, what are the implications if they don't follow what this letter says? Because there are, I guess you could call them concrete steps, as the letter does, but they're also kind of like nebulous enough to where it would be easy to just kind of bullshit. But I guarantee they're not going to even do these small things. And let's talk about a few of them, I guess. Here's some shit from the letter. Now, of course, before they play hardball, they go on to praise Israel for administering polio vaccines to more than 560,000 children in Gaza, which is like way below the amount they said they would. And there were so many things that went wrong with that, and so much obstruction on Israel's part anyway. But moving beyond that, the letter says, to reverse the downward humanitarian trajectory and consistent with its assurances to us, Israel must, starting now and within 30 days, act on the following concrete measures. Failure to demonstrate a sustained commitment to implementing and maintaining these measures may have implications for U.S. policy under NSM 20 and relevant U.S. law. I think NSM 20 is the U.S. law that says any state or whatever political body that is blocking U.S. humanitarian aid can no longer receive any sort of other aid. But they just hedge their bets at every clause in those two long sentences there. There may be implications if you don't have a sustained commitment to the implementation of the maintenance of these measures. It's such slippery language, it makes me want to fucking scream. Number 1, ahead of winter, surge all forms of humanitarian assistance throughout Gaza by, bullet point 1, enabling a minimum of 350 trucks per day to enter Gaza through upholding your prior commitment to allow assistance to enter Gaza consistently through all 4 major crossings. Now, right off the bat, this is a fucking fuck up. The United Nations estimates and other humanitarian and aid agencies and experts across the board have said, at bare minimum, to fend off famine and starvation and all kinds of other unnecessary suffering, that at least 500 trucks, 500 to 600 minimum, would need to come in per day into Gaza, totally unimpeded. And they're like starting off at almost half that as their opening bid here. Which, again, I don't think Israel will even meet that, because in September they had the lowest amount of aid getting this September. They had the lowest amount of aid getting into Gaza than throughout the entire previous year. It was at something like 60 trucks, like in a month. I wish I had the numbers right in front of me. But anyway, it was abysmally low. Right, I found it. Record low average of 69 aid trucks per day entered Gaza in August 2024, compared to 500 per working day last year, which was already not enough to meet people's needs. In August, more than 1 million people did not receive any food rations in southern and central Gaza. That meant the time this article was written in the Norwegian Refugee Council website, Israel's siege now blocks 83% of food aid reaching Gaza. That was published middle of September 2024. So the U.S., again, playing tough, really Fuck you, BB. Haha. You better get at least half the amount of aid needed for people to live, or we might, maybe, could, perhaps, possibly do something, some kind of implication that we can't specify. Yeah. You're picking up what we're putting down, huh? We're tough guys. It's all a big fucking joke. Alright, let's move on to the next Matt Miller clip. Here, he squares off with another favorite of the press pool, Saeed's Eschaton. You probably, well, if you're like me and you watch these things, you've definitely seen this guy square off with cunt chocula before, as well as others like Patel, who I haven't seen for a while, but I've got a short clip of him coming up next. A side-by-side clip, but we'll get there when we get there. So this is Saeed and Miller having a little tete-a-tete.
We've given them, taxpayers paid for almost $23 billion in the last year alone. That's almost $3,000 for each and every Israelis. So you have absolutely no leverage no pressure. You cannot tell them do this or not do this.
So we make very clear to the government of Israel what we believe that are the best outcomes along a number of different vectors in the region. But as you've heard me say before, they're ultimately a sovereign country
smart, man.
and have to make their own decisions.
Yes, but I understand. But a sovereign country that received from American taxpayers that received $22 billion.
So first of all, that number is not
okay.
correct. It
Fine,
conflates
17.
a number of different things. But it's not. It's not correct. It's off.
Okay,
it conflates.
well, half of that.
So
what is the number?
I don't have the exact number, but if you look at the, I know the number you're referring to.
So the number that came out of
which it
there was
so what's the U.S. government? What does the U.S. government think that it has given Israel since October 7th?
So I don't know. We give them $3.3 billion a year, and there was additional money that was appropriated in the supplemental. The reason it's hard to answer that question definitively is they're different.
Don't want to.
That's why. No,
that's why it's hard to
there
answer.
are different ways of looking at it. There's money that is appropriated. There's money that's allocated, and then not actually delivered for years to come.
Educational organizations that have come up with estimates. This building, at least, which is in charge of arms transfers, at least many of them, hasn't seen fit to come up with an update since July of last year.
Yeah, I just don't have the update. I'm just telling you that number. You can look at that number and see how it conflates a number of things, including direct U.S. military spending to combat the Houthis attacking international shipping, which is included in that number, which is obviously not aid to Israel.
It's difficult to separate what has been given to them post October 7th in terms of things that were not approved before then under the MOU, stuff that went to them specifically for the Gaza operation and now Lebanon.
So it depends how you look at it. Is it the amount that's been allocated to them? Is it the amount that's been delivered to them? Is it an amount that is going to be delivered?
I'll take any of them.
No, I know. That's the point, is when you ask the question, it's a difficult one. I don't have the numbers here at my fingertips, obviously. I'm just pointing out that the number that Saeed referred to grossly
Someone's got to have the numbers someplace.
Matt, the numbers were Brown University's numbers, not mine, and so on. But, it doesn't matter what the actual figure is. But we give them a lot of money. We give them a great deal.
It's a shit ton of money, dumb fuck.
We give them, obviously, a great deal of political coverage in the UN and many other places and so on. And to suggest that, this huge and lengthy partnership really does not exact any kind of leverage with the Israelis. Don't you question that?
That's not what I said. The thing that I said is that we are a sovereign country with our interests. They're a sovereign country with their interests.
Right.
We make
doesn't answer it.
We have very direct conversations with them about what we think the appropriate path forward is. But ultimately, like every sovereign country, they have to make their own decisions. They have to bear the consequences for those decisions. They have to carry the risks of those decisions.
Okay.
Fuck you, Matt, is what I believe Saeed went on to say after that. I failed to mention that there's actually kind of a double teaming on Matt Miller there by previous guy, Matt Lee, and Saeed Erica, who began the questioning. Matt Lee was the guy with the, I guess, sort of deeper voice who jumped in there and was pressing him hard about sort of the specific numbers and how you have to factor in all of the illegal arms transfers that Biden has made, like the hundreds of them, as also aid to Israel. We can't just factor in like what was an approved budget at the beginning of the fiscal year or whatever. But anyway, the main point of this whole thing, and the clip does get kind of bogged down with a bunch of crosstalk there, but whatever, is that Saeed's main point is, don't you think we have leverage over these fuckers? He's just like, yeah, finally, someone's asking the most obvious question. And of course, Matt Miller can't answer it. And as Matt Lee says in the clip, which may have been hard to hear, but Matt Miller says the reason it's hard to answer that question. And Matt Lee jumps in and says, you don't want to. That's why. You just don't want to answer. So more in the press pit with this impossible shithead. Here we go. Here's a short one. Here we get to hear my boy Jonah Hill doing transracial play. I did type up a little summary of this on the old shout out TrueNon subreddit to this video. Maybe that's fun. Maybe I read my summary take and then play the clip. So this is a side-by-side comparison between, again, Saeed Ericat, and he's talking to Mr. Patel, or as I call him in my stage play here, Jonah Hill doing transracial play. And then after that short clip, you'll hear another short clip as a comparison with Matt Miller saying some bullshit. My summary of the Jonah Hill doing transracial play one is the following. Saeed, does Iran have the right to defend itself? Jonah Hill doing transracial play. I don't have an assessment. Stammer, deflect. Saeed, fucking seriously, bro? Jonah Hill doing transracial play. Stage direction gives poorly phrased but clear assessments via propaganda talking points about what Iran is and why the U.S. hates it. Saeed, so they're bad and therefore have no right to defend themselves? Jonah Hill doing transracial play. I told you, I don't have an assessment. Now let's hear how that really went down. It might go a little something like this.
The world acknowledges that this was an Israeli aggression on the capital of Iran. But suppose, when you develop the proper information to say that Israel was behind this aggression on the Iranian capital, it is within Iran's right to defend itself.
I'm not going to speculate on
no
this
hypotheticals,
site.
no speculations,
or an assessment to offer for you as it relates to attribution. Okay, and so I will just leave it at that.
Okay. In principle, as a sovereign nation, does Iran have the right to defend itself?
Saeed,
not going to entertain hypothetical principles.
Iran, as a sovereign nation, as any other nation, does it have the right to defend itself?
Iran is a regime that time and time again, since 1979, has been the largest and greatest exporter of terrorism, not just in the Middle East, but broadly. And it has a clear track record of not just suppressing its own people, but also funding, promoting, encouraging malign, destabilizing actions across the region. And our opinion and point of view on the Iranian regime is quite clear, and we will not hesitate to not just stand with our allies and partners when it comes to defending against threats from Iran, but also taking appropriate action from the United States as it stands.
So you're saying that the nature of the Iranian regime strips it of the right to defend itself and to defend its sovereignty.
I just don't have any assessment to offer on this.
No, you just said that.
I don't have any assessment to offer on this incident. I don't have any assessment on attribution.
Let me ask you something. You talked.
Of course, Israel has the right to defend itself, as any nation does. In terms of what Israel's response will be, of course, there must be consequences for Iran for this attack. We've made clear that there must be consequences. I'm not going to get into what those consequences are today.
Yeah, I'm not going to get into what those consequences are. Could they be perhaps attacking Iran? So that's a good side-by-side. I don't know what else really needs to be added to that. Not much. So let's move on to the next nation. Oh, the globe keeps on spinning into the future. And what does my little eye spy but the Deutschland? Germany. Here we go. Germany asked Israel to sign a, quote, genocide clause to their arms deal agreement, stipulating the weapons wouldn't be used to commit genocide. Seems a little too late for that, huh? This allowed Chancellor Olaf Scholz to declare in Parliament the next day that, quote, we have supplied arms and we will supply arms to Israel. But what does a genocide clause look like between Israel and Germany? Well, I can't find this genocide clause written agreement because it hasn't been written yet, as far as I can tell. And all that this story amounts to is Germany has asked nicely that Israel put in writing that they won't use their weapons to kill civilians. They're gonna pinky swear on it. So, again, this is more just... I mean, actually, it kind of goes a step above what the U.S. does. The U.S. doesn't even ask for promises. We just we strenuously urge that Israel use as much restraint as possible. Whatever. The Germans are actually asking for something in writing. Wow. But the problem also is that Chancellor Olaf Scholz has... before, nothing's been written, nothing's been signed, and he's like, wunderbar, it's okay. We asked for the genocide clause, and now we have supplied, and we will continue to supply weapons to Israel, who's definitely not committing genocide. Well, that's absurd. We know genocide, we Germans, and I don't see it. Also, that Green Party lady, Green Party very different in Germany than the one you might be thinking of in the U.S., Baerbock, she gave some absurd speech about how it's ridiculous that Israel could be committing genocide, but also that what do you expect them to do when it comes to blowing up refugee camps and schools? They have to. The one terrorist might be somewhere in there. We leave them no choice. Obviously. And then I was trying to balance something out. I'll just say there is a lot of good anti-war demonstration going on in Germany. I found an article here, but whatever. It's just Arnaud Bertrand, French commentator based in China that I reference a fair amount, I think, on the show. He's a very good social media follow, very thoughtful, independent journalist. He wrote the following tweet about referencing that Baerbock speech and also referencing something that's coming up down the line here. He writes, insane how the goalposts move. We've gone from it's anti-Semitic blood libel to say that Israel targets schools and hospitals to it's perfectly legitimate for Israel to target schools and hospitals. Civilians lose their protection status when they're bombed by Israel, which was the point that Baerbock, the German, I forget her title, foreign minister something, minister of foreign something affairs, she basically just made up a lie about international law, saying that civilians lose their protection status when there's tunnels underneath them with bad guys. Whatever. This is all more of the same. It just comes down to, sure, you're right about everything, except, Hamas uses human shields, unlike Israel or anyone else. Anyway. Final point on Germany. This one I can give a direct shout out. I remember who posted this up on the old Charade sub. Girl de Board treated us to the following Guardian article. 18 treated for severe nausea in Stuttgart after opera of live sex and piercing. Florentina Holtzinger's bloody Sancta was criticized by Austrian bishops and is now a sellout in Germany. And of course, this goes along nicely to a lot of stereotypes, let's say, about Germans being into scat play and whatnot. And it's a hit. It's a hit, and people are vomiting and needing medical treatment after witnessing whatever is going on stage at this thing. I did notice, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but there was a little back and forth between a few people about whether or not shit like this is symptomatic of living in a fascist state. Forgive me if I'm not summarizing it well, but I just remember thinking it was kind of an interesting argument, and then it was kind of like, let's not kink shame, and then, well, I think this is symptomatic of like a deeper psychosocial rot somewhere within, but you be the judge. I don't really have much to weigh in on that at this moment. I've got still a gigantic batch of things to try to talk about here. We distance ourselves from Germany. But before we fully do that, let's call this a palate cleanser. Since I'm transmitting to you from the extremely above ground bunker here, I can report back on an amazing thing I got to see from a vantage point not many get to see it from, and that was the Northern Lights as seen from space. Yeah. I didn't have like the right camera equipment set up at the time. I was just kind of like, I was doing kind of like a sand mandala thing where I was like, I'm not gonna record this. I'm not gonna upload it to whatever. I'm just gonna take it in and let it sit in my memory. But since I can't, plug in something to my brain yet to share this with you, if you check out the old show notes, there will be a link to a video that, unfortunately, a SpaceX spacecraft took a time-lapse footage clip of this dazzling view of charged particles glowing in magenta and turquoise hues as they enter the Earth's atmosphere. But yeah, this was the Dragon spacecraft docked at the International Space Station. I should just say this comes from the International Space Station. That could bypass all that Elon Musk shit, but whatever. That's where it was filmed from, and I'll just say, as cool as the video looks, it pales in comparison to what I took in with my very own naked eyes. But moving beyond the majesty of the natural world as seen from 250 miles above it, it seems like things are happening in Israel. First up, a journalist for the Gray Zone, Jeremy Lafredo. He was, let's say, kidnapped, detained, arrested on very baseless charges in Israel. Essentially all he did, and let's just stress, what he did was no different from what several other journalists did, which was try and document where any missiles may have made contact in and around Tel Aviv. Missiles from Iran, that is. There was essentially like radio silence on this, even though this is not even just an American, but one of those extra special Jewish Americans.
Are the chosen
but I guess like Judaism gets kind of canceled out when you work for the Gray Zone. Aaron Mate, Max Blumenthal, both Jewish, but fuck them. Or the self-hating nature of your Judaism kind of negates any of the privileges one might get, or sympathies, whatever. But yeah, when like an American journalist gets detained in Ukraine, we lose our minds. Mainstream press goes wild. We've seen this happen before. Not a word from the U.S. government on this guy. Or there were a few other like independent journalists that were detained as well. But I mostly have articles focused here on Jeremy Lafredo. And there was at least, I think it was a journalist from, I want to say PBS, did essentially the same thing he did, filmed the same areas, and, had no problem, like, just leaving the country, not being stopped, not being harassed. But yes, so Lafredo was detained alongside 4 other journalists at a West Bank checkpoint on October 8th. according to one of the jailed reporters who later took to X to share the experience. The journalists endured a harrowing ordeal at the hands of Israeli soldiers, including illegal search and seizure. Their car was searched, personal belongings were removed, and they were forced to surrender their phones, with one journalist being beaten and threatened with a gun when he refused. Cruel and inhumane treatment. The journalists were held in the scorching sun and denied shade, water, and medical attention. They were blindfolded, handcuffed, and transported in a military jeep, subjected to verbal abuse and threats of sexual violence. Always with the sexual violence, these fucking people. God damn. It's just like every time. Further abuse at the police station. They were forced to pose for photos with nationalist slogans, endured further insults and threats, and were denied food, water, and legal representation. Lafredo ended up in detention for 3 days before being released on October 11th. He is now barred from leaving the occupied territories until October 20th, while Israeli authorities continue to withhold his phone and passport, leaving him stranded and unable to keep up with his work. He did manage to get a video report out, though, which I watched and was, like, fantastic reporting. Just like textbook what journalism should be, and so often isn't in this rotten day and age of ours, which I'll also link to in the notes. Lafredo has been accused of endangering the regime's, quote, national security and, quote, aiding and sharing information with the enemy, apparently because he reported on Iranian airstrikes that hit Israeli military bases in the occupied territories on October 1st. Israel went to great lengths to hide the extent of the damage caused by the Iranian missiles. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced that 90% of its projectiles had hit their targets, while Tel Aviv and Washington claimed the operation had, quote, failed, right? Because they didn't blow up any nursery schools or whatever. A few days after the attack, Lafredo released a video report on the YouTube channel of the Gray Zone to shed light on the situation. The report demonstrated that Israeli authorities largely concealed the true extent of the damage inflicted on the regime's bases following Operation True Promise 2. To prepare his report on the Israeli bases hit by Iran, Lafredo traveled to the Israeli-occupied territories and documented several impact sites that had not been reported by Israeli authorities, including areas near the Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv. Lafredo also took time to speak to the Israelis residing next to the targeted areas, but said the majority of them refused to speak on the matter. The latest report of Israel's violence against journalists is yet another horrific example of the regime's utter disregard for human rights and the freedom of the press. Only democracy in the Middle East, baby! Most moral army in the world. This brutal regime has now murdered well over 100 journalists in its ongoing war in Gaza. I think it's closer to 200, but maybe there's some hair splitting going on somewhere. I'll have to dig into that later again. With strong evidence suggesting that most of these killings were deliberate. Many journalists and their families have also been subjected to death threats from Israeli officials for doing their jobs. Analysts believe Israel has adopted a pattern of calculated violence designed to silence dissent and control the narrative. Of course they have. Let's hope Jeremy Lafredo is freed in the next 3 days. Be very curious to hear his testimony after the fact. But yeah, I encourage people to check out his reporting there. And an interesting part of the video he made was when he and his taxi driver are getting closer to the Mossad building. Their GPS gets completely scrambled and says that they're 120 miles away in Jordan, in one of the major airports in Jordan, which is suspicious, I guess, to say the least. I guess one could imagine something like that being used to disappear people who sniff around a little bit too close to Mossad operations. But apparently Mossad also has a rich history of what was the term? GPS spoofing? Boofing? Not boofing. Credit to TrueAnon subreddit user Shmoody for posting this. At least this was the first time I saw anything about the story, including the report. Spoofing. I was right by saying spoofing. Yes, and the OP If you just scroll down, this is all linked to the show notes. If you scroll down, you'll see additional links to Israel's recent history of GPS spoofing. So shout out Shmoody and others. And props to Jeremy Lafredo. May he return safely to the welcoming teat of Lady America. And of course, the last several days, at least, the normal, regular old violence has ramped up into insane, heightened levels of violence in northern Gaza. The BBC World News had an interesting headline that they've since altered to be less awful, but originally it was entitled "Surrender or Starve." Surrender or starve, in quotations. Attack on Jabalia hints at controversial Israeli plan for northern Gaza. Controversial Israeli plan for northern Gaza. It's a little bit controversial to starve millions of people into ethnically cleansing themselves, I guess. I mean, also, goddamn, this is where things get fucking rough to talk about. I mean, anyone listening to this probably already saw all of the really horrendous footage. I mean, people in hospital beds on fire. One particular person and photo sort of making the rounds. I mean, the thing is it's like, it seems like everyone's seen it in my little cloistered echo chamber, but like, I guarantee, like, my parents haven't seen this shit. Like, normal, whatever, quote unquote normal people out there. And if they did, they're just like, oh, the horrors of war, better click away from that and fucking TikTok something else. But yeah, I guess I wanted to just, at least in this one instance, the way the BBC is reporting is ridiculous. They ended up changing that title to "Israeli Attack on Northern Gaza Hints at Retired Generals Surrender or Starve Plan for War." So they're acting like it's just like this one controversial general who came up with this idea of systematic starvation, the thing that the fucking leader of the entire IDF came out on October 8th, 7th probably, and said they were going to do, and they have been doing the whole time for over a year now. And we're just pretending like, could be controversial if some kind of starvation plan went into effect. What would that even look like? Can you imagine? So that's fucked up. And another way to summarize what's been happening in northern Gaza lately, Oxfam International, along with 37 other humanitarian organizations, released a urgent joint statement. Northern Gaza is being erased. Global leaders must act now to end Israel's atrocities.
People? That's biblical shit.
Well, don't you see how urgently the U.S. is acting with their very specific, concrete demands that must be met within 30 days? I mean, how much fucking faster do you think this can go? This also points out that since the 1st of October, it's now the 17th, no food has been allowed into northern Gaza, including Gaza City, what is normally the most populated city in Gaza. These days, the displacement, oh geez, it really is mixed up the census. In the joint statement, they say, the Israeli forces' assault on Gaza has escalated to a horrifying level of atrocity. Northern Gaza is being wiped off the map. Under the guise of evacuation, Israeli forces have ordered the forced displacement of an estimated 400,000 Palestinians trapped in northern Gaza, including Gaza City. This is not an evacuation, this is forced displacement under gunfire. Since the 1st of October, no food has been allowed into the area, and civilians are being starved and bombed in their homes and their tents. Hospitals, already overwhelmed, are being ordered to evacuate. They are running out of fuel and essential supplies while doctors and nurses battle to save lives with what little they have left. The wounded flood in, children, older people, victims of Israeli airstrikes, but with no resources to treat them. And it goes on and on to detail the misery and the complete failure of essentially most governments of the world to step in and stop this shit. I mean, of course, the US and Israel are number one culprits, but there's a lot of people on the hook. I just told you about Germany, for example. Yeah, hospital patients burned alive in Israeli attack. His genocidal campaign intensifies in northern Gaza. Here's one that kind of shook me up. I mean, they all shake me up, don't get me wrong, but it was just like, after reading about and seeing videos of all this shit, I came across this video, and this was after I found, a similar video I saw right before this, but, we'll go a little out of order here. Can shout out this one too from the Ultranon subreddit, prestigious _rub_9694. Posted Palestinian firefighters being shot at by the IDF while they trying to put down tent fires after Israeli airstrikes. This was reposted from another subreddit called Public Freakout, which I was really kind of off-put by. Multiple times now I've seen stuff like this posted on that subreddit. Maybe I don't understand the true purpose of that subreddit, but I had kind of caught things on it before, and it was more comical, people angry that they can't get their treats on time or whatever, people throwing baby fits or whatever, first world bullshit stuff. So it seems, I don't know, maybe I'm being overly sensitive to it or something, but putting this under something called public freakout seems wrong to me. But in any case, as people who are in hospital beds because they've just been bombed in a mosque that they were trying to find some sort of sheltered refuge in. They're now in a makeshift hospital bed in a tent, and they are being burned alive to death next to their mother. I'm talking about a very specific person that we all saw pictures of. As shit like that's going down, there are people who are doing this incredible work of, who knows how I would react, nobody knows how they would react in a situation like this, but whatever. The point is that these brave people are fighting through the shock or whatever and trying to save fellow human beings from the most horrifying fates you could imagine. But that's not enough. It's not enough that someone's watching their brother burn to death right before their eyes and they can't do anything about it, because if they try to go over there, they themselves will also catch on fire. No, what needs to happen is you start firing bullets at these people, the people that are trying to save each other from being lit on fire. So yeah, and this is just, this is a 40-second long video, and it's as terrible as you could imagine. And yeah, I don't know, at a loss for words, I guess. But there's more in that vein. I saw a video, like I said, right before that one, of a pregnant woman being approached by an ambulance to presumably help her go and give birth, and IDF snipers are shooting at them. Somehow they managed to get her into the ambulance. I didn't get any true clarity on the outcome of all that. I can imagine easily that it was not good. It didn't appear, I didn't see any wounds. It doesn't fucking matter. But what I found through watching that horrifying video is something I'm sort of surprised I hadn't seen already, which are these repulsive t-shirts that the IDF make for themselves when they reach a certain point in their training, when they've first joined up or whatever, and they're basically, it's their graduation present to themselves. And I found a Haaretz article on this from like 2009, and there's several other articles about this. If you search, if you want to have the pleasures of searching the following keywords: IDF t-shirts, pregnant woman, your favored search engine will turn up numerous articles, a lot of them from 2009, it appears, when I guess this story broke. Haaretz, while it is still just a liberal Zionist magazine, as I've mentioned before, it's much more honest about Israeli culture and Israeli practices than pretty much any mainstream US or otherwise Western media outlet will be. And so there's a fairly comprehensive article about this year. It gets into the whole culture surrounding making these t-shirts. Like, even gets into like, there's one specific t-shirt maker that they all go to, and the journalist interviewed the owner of that company and was basically like, hey, I don't draw these things, I just print them or whatever, you know. But what am I getting at? Okay, well, the first two pictures I saw, let's take a look at them. Well, this applies directly to the shooting at the pregnant woman who's in labor. It says in Hebrew and in English, just so everybody can enjoy, 1 shot, 2 kills. And it has a woman in a like full-on burqa who's visibly pregnant, and she's in the crosshairs of a sniper rifle. Scope is aimed directly at her pregnant belly. 1 shot, 2 kills. Very clever. We also get some more of that really shitty Israeli attempted comedy, where it's like, yeah, the message is disgusting, but also just on a comedic level, they're so fucking stupid and juvenile. Then there's a couple other ones described in the article. So many things about rape. For example, the Levi battalion, and that's the thing, is like the different like little battalions or brigades or whatever each make their own t-shirts to like distinguish themselves. And there's some people in this article who are like defending it. It's just like, it's a very masculine culture and they're just trying to like be unique, and they're just broing out. Like, just let the bros bro out. To be fair, there was some like lip service given by some, I don't know, anonymous, higher ups in the military saying like, we're sure gonna punish these boys or whatever, but who cares? And I'm not even calling for punishments or any of that shit. I just want people to know this is what these sick fucks like to wear for t-shirts. Here's one. A t-shirt for infantry snipers bears the inscription, "Better use Durex," next to a picture of a dead Palestinian baby with his weeping mother and a teddy bear beside him. The fuck does that even mean? Like, what, you better wear a condom so you don't have a kid for us to kill? Is that what I'm supposed to be getting at? Is that what we're getting at here? A graduation shirt for those who've completed another sniper's course depicts a Palestinian baby who grows into a combative boy and then an armed adult with the inscription, "No matter how it begins, we'll put an end to it." There are also plenty of shirts with blatant sexual messages. For example, the Levi Battalion produced a shirt featuring a drawing of a soldier next to a young woman with bruises and the slogan, "Bet you got raped." That's the joke. Yeah, that's it. That's where it ends. A few of the images underscore actions whose existence the army officially denies, such as confirming the kill, i.e. shooting a bullet into an enemy victim's head from close range to ensure he's dead, or harming religious sites, or female or child non-combatants. Gee, we've never seen any of that happen ever. That goes against official protocol, or does it? Anyway, whatever. I don't want to spend too much time on this t-shirt. There was just one more I wanted to find because I can't read the fucking Hebrew and I can't find the English version. Oh yeah, here's this anonymous person trying to sort of justify this shit. G, a soldier, just the letter G, a soldier in an elite unit who has done a sniper's course, explained that it's a type of bonding process. And also, it's well known that anyone who is a sniper is messed up in the head. Totally, bro. Edgelord shit. Our shirts have a lot of double entendres. For example, bad people with good aims. It's more of that clever Israeli humor. Every group that finishes a course puts out stuff like that. When are these shirts worn? G says, these shirts are for around the house, for jogging, in the army, not for going out. Sometimes people will ask you what it's about. Of the shirt depicting a bullseye on a pregnant woman, he said, there are people who think it's not right, and I think so as well. But it doesn't really mean anything. I mean, it's not like someone is going to go and shoot a pregnant woman. Isn't it? It's not? And here's the one I was trying to find. What is the idea behind the shirt from July 2007, which has an image of a child with the slogan, smaller, harder? G explains, it's a kid, so you've got a little more of a problem, morally. And also the target is smaller. Good God. And then he goes on, blah, blah, blah. Such snipers are in tough situations. What if a little kid picks up something? You know, blah, blah, blah. All right, that's enough about the fucking t-shirts. All right, things to save for next week, which I said last week, talking about the Samson option. There's this long but very worthwhile interview called Rationalizing the Horrors of Israel's War in Gaza. The novelist Howard Jacobson has argued that too much press coverage of dead Palestinian children is a new form of blood libel against Jews. Now that one you just gotta see to believe, but I think it's too long to get into now. So just tee it up for next week. What are some quicker hits we could get to? Oh, this asshole hedge fund guy. He was the basis of that character in The Big Short, played by Steve Carell. He had some controversial comments about watching a 19-year-old burn to death with an IV in his arm in a hospital bed. This asshole's name is Steven Eisman, best known for his role in betting against the U.S. housing market before its collapse in 2007. He's been placed on indefinite leave of absence following controversial comments he made regarding the situation in Gaza. But what did he say? What did he have to say? Well, Mohammed Safa posted video of the screams of Palestinians in Gaza being burned alive by Israel. A Holocaust is happening right before our eyes and the world is silent. 10-second video clip. Steven Eisman quote tweeted this and said, "You must be kidding. We are not silent. We are celebrating." And there's no exclamation points either, where it's kind of like, just kidding, I'm just making a tasteless joke. He's just like robotically, you must be kidding. We're not silent. We are celebrating. At least that's how I choose to read it. So yeah, 3 sentences there. Very cool for this, and if it was just some random piece of shit asshole on Twitter, it might not even be worth mentioning, but this guy's like a big fucking financial mover and shaker, like I said, apparently his investment firm has placed him on indefinite leave or whatever, but so fucking what. Another genius, Arsen Ostrovsky. This guy is a real piece of shit. Well, let me just read to you what he had to say, and then I'll explain what his primary occupation is, just for the fun contrast. The IDF should get the Nobel Prize in Peace. No army has done more in the history of war to safeguard and protect civilians than the IDF has in Gaza and Lebanon. End of tweet. He seems to be serious about this. I mean, my reaction to this when I posted it in my little echo chamber community was sometimes all you can do is laugh at this insane bullshit. And Arsen, interesting that his name is Arsen, and all this burning alive stuff has been happening. Curious that Arsen Ostrowski is a international human rights lawyer. He's a CEO at the International Legal Forum, which is a global network of lawyers standing up for Israel and fighting terror, anti-Semitism, and BDS in the international legal arena. He's a proud Zionist. Hashtag bring them home, blah, blah, blah. You spend 5 seconds scrolling through his Twitter and you feel like you need a shower. Abhorrent person. But the Nobel Peace Prize did get awarded recently, and it was awarded to a Japanese humanitarian group, and their spokesperson pissed off Israel by saying, "I thought those fighting hard for peace in Gaza would deserve it." The Japanese anti-nuclear campaigner whose group won the Nobel Peace Prize says he was surprised they won the award instead of people working to stop Israel's war on Gaza. I will say, just as a general anecdotal-based opinion, Japan has been surprisingly not as lockstep with the West on Israel and Gaza issues as one might expect. And not just like private citizens like this guy, but like, I don't have the stories pulled up right now. I think I've talked about some of them in the past even, but higher up representatives in the government are at least like saying the right things. I can't really speak to like any other actions, but anyway, it's been, let's see, when did this come out? So 4 days ago, someone posted, "It's been 6 days since the UN confirmed systemic rape of Palestinians by Israel." This story's been completely swept under the rug. And when I read this, I was like, hasn't all this shit already been confirmed? But the only difference is that the UN is like piling on with even further confirmation to that, what's it called? B'Tselem, Welcome to Hell, the huge report released by this Israeli human rights organization that was like, I don't know how many weeks ago at this point. But anyway, yes, just one more thing not getting any attention in the media. Instead, people just keep shooting their mouths off about how actually it's Hezbollah and Hamas that use rape as a weapon of war, and nobody can seem to provide any evidence of that. Something I wish I didn't have to bring up so often, but it gets brought up constantly, and not just by weirdos and freaks on the internet, but the vice president of the United States who is running to become president. Jesus, I don't even think Trump fucking says this shit. I mean, he probably does, but I could only think of specifically, I don't know, whatever. And then there were a bunch of people casting doubt on, it was something like, 65 healthcare workers who were working in Gaza reported that they saw bullet wounds in children, and even provided gruesome photographic evidence and also X-ray evidence. I didn't see the gruesome evidence, but I did see the X-ray evidence where you could just see actual, bullets lodged in children's heads. And these sick fucks are, without any rhyme or reason, without any, even pretense of like, well, here's an expert on digital photograph manipulation, and they said this is bullshit. No, it's just people just saying, fake and gay. These dead kids with bullets stuck in their brains are fake and gay. And this caused the New York Times to sort of actually do their job for fucking once and push back and like double, triple fact check that no, these x-rays are for real. But this fucking piece of shit, this perennial asshole that some people listening to this may be aware of by name, Hen Mazig. That sounds like a racial slur. Hen. I don't know how to say your fucking name. I'm sorry. Hen, cluck, 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 cluck. Your name is Hen. Last name Mazzig. He's one of these doubters. He wrote, in a recent New York Times opinion piece, 65 healthcare workers reported that they saw bullet wounds in children. A normal newspaper would highlight that they did not observe IDF soldiers shooting children. They might have highlighted alternate, equally probable scenarios that Hamas or anyone could have shot the children with stolen IDF weapons. That's not journalism. That's anti-Semitism. I'm so tired, and just fuck you. Fuck you. As I previously commented on about this, I said, anyone could have been running Auschwitz. To say otherwise is German-phobic, so I feel like that gets the point across enough. Also, I love when these fucking idiots, the New York Times constantly does their bidding. And like the one moment that they suggest that, hey, some kids got shot by the IDF, and they weren't even saying like maliciously. It's just like, hey, you're not giving me my exact thing that I exactly want right now. And then they stamp their little feet and write shit like this that they should be so embarrassed and ashamed of that it should make them want to make their own x-rays of their own heads that match the ones of the children, if you know what I'm saying. So fuck you, Hen. I wanted to highlight this really excellent doctor. Has been a very good advocate over the past year, and I wouldn't be surprised if beyond this past year, but I don't really know. I only have discovered her because of all of the horrors of the last year. I've seen her multiple times. She somehow manages to get on these like mainstream and like cable news, whatever shows. Somehow doesn't get cut off when she's speaking truth to power, as it were. Although they did kind of try in this appearance here, which I'll point out for you in the clip. So this was from a little more than 2 weeks ago now, I guess. In the beginning, the guest, Dr. Haj Hassan, she begins making a very good point, and as you'll hear, the host comes up with a very phony reason to like cut the feed and go to commercial, which is funny because when they get back to her, she says the same basic points like just as forcefully. I just want you to hear this person because I think she's a hero. She's like putting her life on the line in Gaza on the regular. She also manages to go into these awful fucking viper dens of propaganda, and she's really well spoken and genuine, and you can tell she really cares. And she's also really good at, unlike me, she's really good at summarizing these really important points like off the top of her head. So let's just have a listen.
Today marks 1 year since the Hamas terror attacks on Israel. 1,200 people killed, and on that day, 250 others kidnapped, 101 people believed to still be held hostage in Gaza. And then the subsequent war between Israel and Hamas has also created a desperate humanitarian crisis that continues to play out in Gaza. Gaza's health ministry says nearly 42,000 people have been killed in the enclave. They do not make a distinction between civilian and combatant. Nearly 2 million people have been displaced, and overnight we have heard about Israel making new moves into the northern part of Gaza and telling people in the southern part of Gaza, issuing new evacuation orders there as the Operation Offensive continues there. Joining us now to talk about what is happening today with that humanitarian crisis is Dr. Tanya Haj Hassan, co-founder of Gaza Medic Voices. She's also an intensive care doctor with Doctors Without Borders. And Dr. Thayer Ahmed, an emergency physician from Chicago who traveled to Gaza to treat patients and help earlier this year. Thank you both so much for being here. Dr. Haj Hassan, how do you reflect on what has happened in the last year? The tragic terrorist attack on Israel, the war with Hamas afterward that has left so many Palestinians dead and sparked this desperate humanitarian crisis that continues to play out.
Frankly, Kate, I struggle to even think about it as a war anymore. You have a population of 2 million people effectively besieged in a concentration camp that have been killed indiscriminately for 365 days now. And I know you said that the Ministry of Health does not distinguish between civilians and combatants, but neither did you when you referred to all those killed on October 7th. The death of any human being is tragic, and especially
Uh-oh.
the death of civilians.
Time to
who
cut
have nothing
away.
to do with any of this.
She called us
What
out
I can
too
tell
hard.
you to help you delineate those figures is 70% or 69%, if you want to be accurate, of those killed are women and children in Gaza. Women and children. That is not a normal
Doctor, I'm so
percentage
sorry. Is there?
of those killed
I don't
in
know if
times
it's
of conflict.
having to do with me, but I don't know if I've lost audio. If everyone out there can still hear the doctor, but
I'm sorry, Satan's
Okay.
telling me
I'm sorry,
we need
Doctor.
to
I'm having an
cut to
audio
commercial
issue.
break.
So, the control room, if you could work on my audio so I can continue with this interview, I would appreciate it. Doctor, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I thought we were having a technical issue. You know what? Let's do this. We're going to take a quick break so we can fix this audio issue. Not really sure what's going on here with this technical glitch, and we'll get right back to it after this.
Okay, and now we're gonna play what CNN ultimately ended up airing, which means they cut out everything you just heard her say. So that was the CNN Flubs audio version, which does end up playing the rest of it, but it also has it does end up having some weird audio things cutting out. But anyway, this is less about trying to be conspiratorial. I mean, maybe who knows? Let's just say, fine, there was some audio problems. The look on this, if you see the video, the host's face, she's just giving this fucking death stare. It's really easy to imagine something going off in her earpiece that's telling her fucking find a way to shut this lady up or something. But anyway, even if none of that's true, the point is that this doctor, both doctors actually, but I feel especially Haj Hassan makes some really great points and makes them very concisely. And so let's finish listening to it here.
Where do you think it does? What do you think is going to happen with this humanitarian crisis, with the additional factor of Gaza's about to enter the winter, which often brings
Call it a
heavy
humanitarian
rain
crisis
to the region?
again.
Kate, in all honesty, a humanitarian crisis is what you deal with when you have a hurricane, what you deal with when you have an earthquake. You have an insult and a humanitarian response. This is my career. This is what I do for a living. Every single person who does this for a living will tell you the same thing. This is different. This is not a humanitarian crisis. Kate, and I'm going to say it very clearly for your viewers to hear, this is genocide. When 70% of the population that are killed are women and children, when the population is starved of food, of water, of medicine, when you have attacks, repeated attacks on all the hospitals, the clinics, the aid distribution sites, the humanitarian aid agencies that try to help. More UN workers have been killed in Gaza than in UN's history. When you have over 900 families that have been exterminated, that have been taken off of the civil registry, killed, when you have over 17,000 children that have lost one or both parents, when you have bakeries, aid distribution sites, churches, mosques, schools, and in the last 3 days, in the last 24 hours, in fact, a hospital today that was bombed, as you just reported, the hospital where I personally was working, and I can tell you, they are working every second of every day to try and sustain life when Israel's strategy and evidence on the ground suggests that they're doing the exact opposite. They were targeted today. There was a rehabilitation center that was targeted in the last 24 hours, and there was an orphanage that was targeted earlier this week. These are the types of places that are being targeted. And so it's really hard to hear it over and over and over again, framed in the way that it's being framed in the media, which frankly, Kate, is very misleading. It is very misleading. 365 days of this. Death tolls that are so far outdated, we have no idea how many people are killed, but I am genuinely afraid about what we're going to find out when the dust settles. History books will be written on this. And countries will have to reckon, media agencies will have to reckon with their major role in the genocide of an entire population and in the destruction of humanitarian law.
Okay, so that was great. She called out the news network to their faces. So Israel's doing what it does best, attacking aid workers, UN peacekeepers. They've attacked UNIFIL forces twice. Once was Indonesians, and the Indonesian government has decried this as terrorism, because it is. And Sri Lankans, I don't know about the Sri Lankan response exactly yet, but this all ties in with the stories I went into a little bit last week about the UNIFIL peacekeeping forces from Ireland, and they were never attacked, although it was getting close to that. And then soon after I recorded that episode, these attacks happened on some of the other UNIFIL workers who refused to leave, by the way, despite Bibi Netanyahu saying, "Get out of the way." And he made some stupid fucking public announcement about this, being like, "We're not trying to fight you. We gave you plenty of warning. We gave you 10 minutes warning. We said get out of the way." It's like their job is to fucking keep the peace on the border. And so a lot of them, I don't know about if all of them, but a lot of them refuse to leave. And there's like some very clear satellite imagery once again, just like there was with the whole debate between the IDF and the Irish peacekeeping forces. The IDF saying like, "We weren't anywhere even near you guys." But here, the official IDF Twitter profile put out a satellite image, and with the following written above it. "You might be asking yourself the same question we are. How come Hezbollah is able to embed their weapons just a few meters away from a UNIFIL post?" To which Richard Medhurst, very good independent journalist who I should shout out more often, really, who, by the way, was recently detained in London for being pro-Palestine, like interrogated for a ridiculously long time, and so on. I get more into that another day, but he responded to this IDF tweet with the following: "And Israeli army drones, like the one you used for this video," because this is like an aerial, sorry, it's not a satellite shot, it's a drone shot, "like the one you used for this video, are they allowed near UNIFIL posts? No, but there you are anyway, shooting at the perimeter cameras too, damaging observation towers, vehicles, gates, walls, bunkers, firing at and injuring peacekeepers." So he's just calling out the IDF for the shit they do. And for some more fun, kabuki theater, the Washington Post wrote that Biden says he is urging Israel. There's that word. We're urging you guys. Biden says he is urging Israel to stop attacks on UN peacekeepers as outcry grows. It's like the damage has been done. There's nothing to urge. Like, at the very least, you should be condemning if it's just going to be words. But these are, like, plainly illegal acts. And you don't even need the International Criminal Court to step in to tell you that. This is shit that, like, as UN members, they are all in agreement about. Anyway, Biden's remarks followed 2 attacks in 48 hours near the headquarters of the UN Interim Force in Lebanon. UNIFIL said 2 had been injured by the latest strike. Yes, okay. So yeah, there's Biden issuing, harsh urgings. As I joked somewhere online about this and about how much I hate this word urging, and I hate this word tough decisions being used as like euphemisms for, decapitating people, etc. We are politely urging the U.S. military to slightly reconsider mildly recalibrating the atom bombs that they may be making the tough decisions to drop on Japanese civilians. And if they don't, well, we urge them to make the tough decision to investigate their own unspeakable crimes, and we urge this investigation to be robust, swift, and thorough. I've been watching so much of these fucking spokespeople, I'm really, absorbing their stupid way of speaking, I guess. Fucking, cunt chocula and, transracial play, Jonah Hill and John Kirby. They're all the same. I haven't seen from our good little ventriloquist dummy, John Kirby in a while. I guess final note for this week, and final note on Lebanon. Controlled demolition in Lebanon by the IDF. Again, this is it's very deja vu. This is Gaza 2.0. Remember that thing remember that bit I read from that 2009 Haaretz article about the disgusting t-shirts and how one of the military representatives said, it's against military protocol to damage religious sites. Well, they've completely demolished an entire village in one fell swoop with a controlled demolition. It's a historic village which includes the shrine of the prophet Benjamin, son of Jacob, a site that is more than 2,100 years old. And this was all done in that classic IDF way where a bunch of fucking dickheads stand from about 3 miles away or something from the site they're going to blow up with the push of a button, and they film themselves doing it and they post it on TikTok and wherever, and nobody cares. We're just disseminating footage of war crimes against humanity. Like, it's it's just insane. But there must be a reason, right? Why would they do that? They're not just doing it for fun. It's not. No, what they do for fun is they break into people's houses and they ransack them and loot them and put on, undergarments and film themselves doing that. That's how they blow off steam. That and sharpshooting kids in the heads and in the kneecaps as part of a competitive game with their buddies. Basically, the best I could find about this particular controlled demolition is, there's Hezbollah tunnels under there, of course. And the only way you can get to a tunnel is by destroying everything that may be on top of that tunnel. We all know this. First of all right, show me them tunnels. Out of all of the controlled demolitions I've seen in Gaza, and now I'm seeing it in Lebanon, never once seen. You'd think they maybe revealed the tunnels. You'd think they'd be excited to reveal those tunnels. Hey, look, you can see them perfectly now because the big explosion got right down to where those tunnels are. It was all worth it. Anyway, this leads into a whole other thing about human shields that I have set aside, but as I find myself saying at the end of these midweek solo episodes, my voice is giving out. I'm also setting aside some stories from South Korea and from China. Once again, sadly, I've got this hilarious story about China, but we'll just have to wait until next week. So let's call it a day there. Ending with controlled demolitions is as good a place as any. So please check the episode notes, join our Discord, add your voice to the chorus. Feel free to do those classic podcasty things and rate, review, subscribe, etc. Maybe try to do that on Apple Podcasts, I suppose. Keep them aggregated there. Like I've been saying of late, I will read any 5-star review on the podcast. And as always of late, I'll sign off with a little word of wisdom, a little deep thought, if you will, from a little philosopher of the 20th century named Jack Handy. Most people don't realize that large pieces of coral, which have been painted brown and attached to the skull by common wood screws, can make a child look like a deer. Alright, see you next week, folks. This has been Transmission 007. Cease.
first voice recording was made in 1860. It was a 10-second fragment of the French folk song Au clair de la lune recorded by inventor Edward Leon Scott de Martinville. But who will make the final voice recording and when? What will it be? Who will hear it?